remembering a century of war, the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month.
At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
As ever, wreaths will be laid, taps will sound, bands will march, and sad salutes will be raised by an ever-diminishing corps of veterans who fought for their country in wars great and small. But as the warriors themselves fade away, the memory of their deeds, the beaches they stormed, the heights they captured, and the towns they saved have become destinations for their families and descendants. They all come on holidays to remember and to marvel at the rebuilt communities and to wonder how ugly wars could have raged through such glorious scenery. The First World War, the one to end all wars, was but a preview of the horrors to come. Here on the famous Western Front, you can travel through the tortured terrain where armies slaughtered each other. This is how a few hundred miles of mostly flat farmland ended up heaved and cratered by 4 years of bombardment. Below ground, you can explore the tunnels, some designed much earlier in peacetime by merchants for storage, then used in war to move bodies. Today, these museums are a reminder of a world gone awfully bad. It's hard to believe, strolling these pleasant beaches and charming French coastal ports, that just 2 decades after the Great War, Europe would be at it again. On this English Channel beach at Dunkirk in 1940, a trapped army waited a week to be rescued.
We actually, in fact, destroyed all our vehicles some 14 miles from Dunkirk and then walked with no food and no sleep for 3 days amidst a lot of bombing and shelling from the Germans.
I came home on a boat called the Maid of Kent, I think it was, with one of these pleasure cruisers.
The Second World War dragged in many more countries, as well as many thousands of civilians who risked their lives behind the scenes in local resistance.
In Calais it was difficult to resist because there were too many Germans, but we have many people who died in concentration camp. They belonged to the Secret Army, and that was more serious, and they never came back.
Back across the English Channel on the coast of Kent, many visitors wander through the grand remains of Dover Castle. Just as intriguing is what lies below the White Cliffs. Here there are remarkable tunnels, first built to guard against invasion by Napoleon's armies. During the Second World War, they came in ever so handy watching the channel for an invasion that never came. Remembrance Day also finds veterans, their friends and families, and military historians recalling the contributions made by people far from the front lines. For example, Brandon, Manitoba. Pilots and aircrew from around the world came to this small western Canadian town to learn to fly. Today, a museum in this wartime hangar marks the work of the British Commonwealth Air Training Plan.
There's 14 aircraft on display, as well as uniforms, all other kinds of memorabilia, photographs, etc.
A living example of how one country has survived wars is Malta, but it has certainly taken a beating. The island fortress's great bastions, built to ward off medieval attacks, have come in handy ever since. While much of Malta's tourism is aimed at the hot and beachy life of a Mediterranean island, more and more people head there to visit old airfields and coastal defences where perhaps a parent or a friend served and died. During the First World War, Malta was known as the nurse of the Mediterranean. This is where so many wounded ended up in hospital. Later, Malta was right in the firing line as the Second World War raged across Italy into North Africa. Deep in the island's great medieval bastions, the defenders of Malta carved out their nerve centre. Today you can visit these underground war rooms which directed the coastal defence and the air war.
We are in the combined operations room. It is from this room that the Allied commanders actually oversaw and monitored the invasion of Sicily during July 1943.
Years of air raids, sometimes a dozen a day, left Malta in ruins. This heroic little country suffered a worse beating than Britain did during the Blitz. To honour her stoic people, her courageous dock workers, and her unflinching determination to survive, Malta was awarded the George Cross. There are monuments on the island to the many who died in the Mediterranean campaign. In these fields near Vimy Ridge in France, Every cross carries 4 names, and the crosses seem to march on forever. Here on November the 11th, and at cenotaphs and cemeteries around the world, in military museums, on old battlefields, and in veterans' hospitals and legions, people from all countries will recall the price that others paid in a century of war. For more information, visit our website ontopoftheworld.net.